Hello, hello. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are listening in. My name is Zipporah from supportintimacy.com, and I help high achieving men to open their hearts so they can create a fulfilling life, both personally as well as relationally, and lead from their hearts, serve from their hearts. And I'm here with you today to have a bit of a personal chat. The holidays are coming up, and God, I know all too well the family dynamics can be a struggle, especially when we have a lot of unmet needs or unmet needs that have gone on our entire life from childhood. Like, how often do you go home for the holidays? You're with family, and you're like, "Holy shit, what just happened?" Like, this whole child self comes out screaming, possibly because you've never had a conversation about, um, whatever, these core wounds, these unmet needs, these parts of your relational dynamic. And I want to share a little bit of a personal story. So I'm here, I'm home in Bend, Oregon, and my brother and my father actually live on the East Coast, right? Brother's in Connecticut, father's in Maine. Some of you might have seen the videos a couple months ago that I posted of me and my pop. And we live very, very radically different lives. I'm You might relate to that. And so, we don't have any angst between us. I love them dearly, but it's one of those things, living completely different lives, the way of our upbringing, and for whatever other reason, we just never made it a point to stay connected, as in visiting each other, seeing each other. We definitely do the phone calls, but I hadn't seen my father in 15 years. I hadn't seen my brother in 17 years, estimate. And a couple months ago, I decided it was time. It was time to go back to see them, back to the East Coast. And I went, and I recognized when I went that I was feeling tired. I had just gotten off a couple week of a business trip, and I've always had this strong desire for really rich, deep conversations, like emotional depth. I mean, I geek out on just like psychology, like breaking and analyzing my own life patterns and stories. And I had the strong desire to be close to my father. And right, that's my love language, right? Like, what's your love language? If you're listening in, as you come in, feel free, comment, tell me where you're listening in from, and chime in and let me know if you know what your love language is. What makes you feel connected? For me, it's quality time. For me, it's vulnerability. It's a lot of emotional connection. And growing up as a child, one of the things that I was really clear that I didn't have was that. I didn't feel understood. I always felt different. Um, Never didn't feel like I had much of space to be what I'm talking about, like that vulnerable, like talk about those dark emotions and just dig them apart and get into them. And so here I am going home. And when I got there, hear me super zen, thinking I'm all pieced out. And when I got there, all of a sudden, that little girl was like, "This is how I connect. I want this closeness. I want to be able to share my dark moments. I want to be able to share my struggles. I want to get feedback on my struggles. I'm wanting to be met in them, to feel the empathy and the compassion." This was all like loading it on my father. And the more I held on to that, two things happened. I did have the ability to stay curious, right? So that's one of the steps that I encourage my clients to often is in these moments when you feel like someone's not listening to you, or you feel that you're not um, being heard, they're just not understanding you, is can you have an ounce of curiosity in that moment? So that's step number one. No matter what needs are being met or not met, can you come in and have some curiosity? So within that moment, I was able to have curiosity, be like, okay, interesting. Do we have different, hello, Beth, do we have different communication styles? Do we have different listening styles? And in the same time, you don't want to overlook and ignore, you don't want to ignore your own feelings. You don't want to gaslight yourself. So in that process, it was okay, yeah, and I'm feeling tense. I'm feeling agitated. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling sad because I really have this need, and damn it, it's not being met. Like, you're not meeting my need. How dare you? um, I don't want to be the one to show up. Like, my story was, I don't want to be the one to show up and have to be the big person, to be the responsible person, to be the one that holds it all together, because that's the pattern of mine. So in that process, the more that you're able, like if you're going through this, lean into curiosity, acknowledge your feelings, and it could just be like putting your hand on your heart, taking some deep diaphragmatic breath, and say like, yeah, I see you. Yep, I feel this, right? So you might have to do it yourself. You might want to journal it and write it on a piece of paper. Because again, if there's different listening styles, and often with parents, right, we're raised completely different. And especially, I think it's a little bit different as well on the East Coast. So so we're not so used to, people on the East Coast don't necessarily have the as openness as vulnerability, maybe, as the West Coast. That's sometimes my experience. So if I can have all that in my awareness, right? Acknowledging my feelings, being curious about, well, maybe this person just doesn't have the skill. Maybe, what went through my head is, well, maybe they're feeling uncomfortable with the topic. Maybe they don't know how to respond. Right. So these are things that help us start to develop a bit of compassion. And actually, that those moments when we're reaching and grasping for someone else to meet our need, because again, it's probably a repetitive, especially with family, we're talking about family here, a repetitive cycle from an early age. So of course we want that need met. And sometimes it just feels debilitating, but right, it creates constriction. Your chest is going to tighten, your throat probably is tense, you probably have no breath in your belly, you're feeling very armored, right? Shoulders are going forward. Those are some physiological responses that will happen. And after curiosity, after acknowledging your own feelings, the next component is, I think I just lost my train of thought. So when we're constricted, we're contracted, we want to become aware of that. So become aware of that armoring. And the third step is ask yourself, what is more important? Do I want to be right? Do I need to be right? Or do I want loving connection? Like, where's the scale there for you? And there's no right or wrong answer to that. It's really going to be your personal journey. This was my personal journey. And so, I knew without a doubt I wanted extreme connection. I knew that that was the most important, was having connection. And I'm going to put on my glasses, Beth, because I'm seeing you chat here and I can't see without them. I can't read. Your love language is quality time and vulnerability. Yes, yes, yes. I so get that. And welcome from Santa Fe as well, Beth. I so love having you here with us. Yay. Love this conversation. And so, right, coming back, you're going to acknowledge your feelings. You're going to be curious as much as you can about the other person, about your family member, because you might not even relate to their process around it. And then what's more important, being right or having that loving connection? And for me, it was having loving connection. And the one thing that I share often with my clients is, whether it's in a romantic partnership, with friends, or with family, is it's a lot of burden on one person if we think that they are going to fulfill and meet all of our needs. It sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Like romantic, the wonderful romantic movies, one person meeting all of our needs. And imagine someone else requiring you to meet every ounce of their needs. Like that's taxing, right? What's that concept idea? It takes a village, right? And so this applies to family dynamics because what if there was someone else in the mix where they potentially took on meeting some of your needs? So for me, I met my father's partner for the first time, his girlfriend, the woman he's dating, and we instantly had this amazing dynamic connection. She had the capacity for those vulnerable conversations. She um, had my listening style, right? So it's not right or wrong, and that's something you'll notice in this conversation. We're not saying one way is right or wrong, but she met my style for listening, for communication. It was a language that I understood, right? It's like speaking different languages. She spoke my language. And so as I started spending time with her, speaking the same language, what do you think happens? Like all of a sudden, my armor, my guard, my frustration started softening. So my physiological responses started softening. My breath could go deeper. My heart was more open. And because I was resourced, I now had more capacity to see my father. I had more capacity to understand him. I had more capacity now to create some fun, dynamic activities for us to connect. Which, if I was grasping onto him and pissed off and trying to grasp on making him fulfill a need that, again, if you think of it as speaking different languages, that we possibly we it was impossible. We just couldn't speak the same language. Imagine if you're in a foreign country trying to have a rich conversation with someone and you're not understanding what each other is saying, literally. And so this is the workaround. So you're getting your needs someplace met someplace else. You're coming back to, wow, now I have more capacity. So I had more capacity. And now, okay, so what can we do? And so now it's leaning more into on, what do you find fun? What would you like to do? Because obviously, if we're striving and reaching to have our own needs met, we're not going to even want to think about what the other person wants to do because we're too constricted, armored, fighting for what we want. So these steps are about letting go of the fight. And that's not always easy to let go of the fight. But if we can start to develop more home practice to um, to work with these old emotional stories and ideas and outdated ideas and let go of that "you're right, I'm wrong" mentality, we can start to have more of that love and more of that connection. And I believe that's, God, especially on the planet today, it's what we want more of, truly, ultimately. And most of us are taught to fight for it, aren't we? Think about a time in your life where, like, your needs weren't met, like where you felt that. Or you were trying to share something with a family member and they just talked over you, or they didn't respond and they changed the subject and they started talking about something else and you felt completely ignored, right? That feels terrible. However, again, if we want that loving connection, can we take on these steps? Can we come back to ourselves for a moment, take some deep diaphragmatic breath, acknowledge what you're feeling, acknowledge your emotions? After we go live, I'm going to share some links in the comments to share with you because some of the stuff that I'm sharing is my feelings and needs wheels. My clients laminate them and carry them with them everywhere because how often has it been difficult for you to share what you're feeling? I know I've circled Dallas many times, that circling Dallas, that airplane of thoughts, and the other person's just looking at me like wide eye, just waiting, and they get lost in the conversation. And so feelings and needs, wheels, laminate them. I'm going to put the link in the comments once we're done live. And after you acknowledge those feelings and needs, have that curiosity. Okay, so you can use your feelings and needs wheels for that too. Okay, so I'm curious, like what might they be feeling? Well, maybe they're feeling uncomfortable, maybe they're feeling weird, maybe they're feeling stupid, maybe, you know, building compassion, right? That's what we're doing, building compassion. And then you get to open up the door and see where else your needs can be met. Like letting go of that pressure on that one person, and then creating and reframing and finding activities where you can be connected. So, if you enjoyed this, let me know. Comment, let replay if you come and listen to the replay. I go live here every so often. I used to go live a lot more. It's just been a really interesting couple of months, and I have been honoring my inner world. I've been honoring the deep inner shifts that I believe many of us on the planet are experiencing today. Um, in our own way. And I stepped back a bit from the internet, from sharing lives, from our Wi-Fi connection here around the globe. But I'll be back here and there. You'll see me trickle in. But feel free to comment replay if you're listening in, comment what your love language is if you know it. How do you feel connection? I'm going to share the links to the wheel of feelings and needs so you can have that. And then I also have a handout and video to help you feel heard and seen during the holidays with your family. So I will also share that link in the comments and let me know. Let me know once you get it. Let me know if you have questions or how it goes if you apply that in your family dynamics. Yeah, so thank you for listening with me. Thanks for being here with me. Sending you loads